Hey everybody, here I'm with Maxim Jago. How you doing, Maxim?
Very well, thank you. I love that intro music. It feels like we're going to have some incredible experience.
That's right. A little exciting beam of sound, right?
Yeah, exactly.
My friend John made that, so John Williams.
Nice.
Thank you for that. So yeah, we are going to be talking about what is creativity today. So first, I'd like to just ask everybody, where are you watching from? So please let us know in the comments. And as I always do, I remind you that if you give StreamYard permission to show your name and profile pic, I will be able to credit you when you comment or ask questions. You should see that underneath the live itself, under live video. Click on the link, streamyard.com/Facebook, and give permissions for that. Thank you. So where is everyone watching from? Let us know. Let me make sure that the volume is off on my phone. There we go.
New York. Welcome, Benito.
Benito from New York City, the Big Apple. Cool. Yep. I lived in Brooklyn for about 10 years, various parts. Yep. Great.
I had most of a year on 39th and 9th, really close to Times Square. It was amazing.
Nice. Pierre is here. I know he's in Europe. Not sure where he might be now, but he used to be an admin for the group. Thank you for all your help throughout the years, Pierre. Yeah. Good to see you here.
Was it Francais? Is Pierre French?
It's a French name, but I think he might be
Budapest.
He's in Budapest now. Yes. Okay.
I need to practice my French because I'm attending the Cannes Festival in a month.
Oh, nice.
So il me faut pratiquer le langue français ce soir.
He's even got the beret on, you know.
Yeah, I was going to say. Yeah.
So let us know where everyone was.
Always wanted to visit Budapest.
There we go. It seems like Budapest would be beautiful, yeah. Yeah, whenever someone asks me, you know, if you won the lottery or, you know, came in a lot of money and you could live anywhere you want, I always think I would like to live in Europe, though, because I love the fact that, you know, I probably would choose London as my base. And then from there, you can go to Italy, Germany, France, Spain. I mean,
that's right.
Quite nice. And
that's a good spot.
And as far as I know, they still have very good like outdoor markets, right? So you can get very fresh
market, Camden Market. Well, yeah, London. I mean, the whole of Europe does.
Yeah.
But London's my my hometown, so it's the place I know best.
It seems like they cater more towards organic too, right? So like know, fruits and vegetables.
Very common. Yeah.
And speaking of Europe, we have Tony from Ireland. Good to see you here, Tony.
Welcome.
Let people come on in. We'll start again soon. But yeah, once again, let us know where you are watching from.
I guess it's a Friday, right? I work every day, so I can usually tell it's the weekend because I get less spam. And I think why do I have so few emails today? And it's because it's a Sunday.
I started getting a lot of spam on Instagram. Like I started getting like these groupings of people messaging me. It's kind of weird.
We have a mysterious Facebook user saying hello from Los Angeles.
Let's see if I can find out who.
I had a good amount of time in Hollywood as well. Had a place on Sunset and Vine for a while, and before that, Pasadena.
Well, let's remind.
I miss the cheap sushi and the fantastic Mexican food in California.
Yeah, when we lived in San Francisco, there's a really great sushi boat place. You ever been to those places where the little boats of sushi go by, the little, and you just grab what you want? There was a really good one in San Francisco.
That stuff. Yeah.
So just to remind everyone, please do give permission to StreamYard. Go to that link underneath the live video, streamyard.com/Facebook. Give permission so then we can give you credit when you comment or ask questions.
And welcome from Orange, Australia. That's fantastic. I've been to Melbourne, where I truly experienced 4 types of weather in one day. It's amazing.
And then we have
Canada. Welcome,
Lupus from Canada.
Yes.
Lupus is always supportive in the groups. So good to see you.
I should be hopefully in Canada for the Toronto Film Festival. In fact, my friends and I are looking at hosting a Pyjama Party there, just as we will be at the Cannes Film Festival.
A what party?
Well, my friends and I host the Cannes Pyjama Party.
Pyjama Party.
It's during the Cannes Film Festival, and the idea is to remove the kind of elitism and hierarchy that you get at festivals like Cannes. It's very much red ropes and, you know, who knows who. So the 2 rules for you to get into the Pyjama Party are, number 1, you have to find one of us, the organizers, and ask if you can come. And the answer is yes, until the guest list is full. And number 2, you can't be at the party unless you're wearing pajamas.
Great.
And they've got to be family friendly. So, you know, you can wear a onesie or you can wear long pajamas, but no sexy stuff. We have grandparents and children there. It's a really family friendly place. And we have about 300 guests expected for the party in Cannes in July coming up.
Oh, I think
Toronto Film Festival is in Toronto, if that's your question. Yeah, Toronto International Film Festival. It's great. It's a great festival.
Okay, so we're almost 10 minutes after the hour. People might be getting restless, so
no, let's get to it.
So I guess I'll start off by asking you, what is creativity for you, Maxim?
Wow. Well, if I may, I'm going to answer this in 2 parts.
Yeah, I'm going to go solo for you. There we go.
Okay. Oh, hello, there's me. I would say when I started out, I saw creativity as the classic ideal version of creativity. So you're a painter or a dancer or a singer or a musician. And along the way, once you've identified one of these classic artistic mediums that you're going to work in, you then develop your craft, right? So you get skills and expertise and training and practice, and then you gradually become an expert in that particular medium, and you start to produce hopefully really fantastic work. But over the years, and my field is film and photography, so I've directed quite a lot of films and edited quite a lot of films, and I'm a screenwriter. I'm also an actor, and I do voiceover sometimes and that kind of thing. And I'm an author. But what I gradually realized is that creativity, or this act of creating something that didn't exist before, is much, much broader. So my working definition now is that anytime you make an intentional decision, anytime you take a turning point where a different future is going to emerge, or let me call it a particular future is going to emerge, that is a creative act. And it could be choosing one thing for lunch rather than another. It could be choosing red socks rather than blue, or whatever it is that you decide intentionally. That's creative. And so, we'll be talking in a bit, I suppose, about the conference that I'm about to be running. And we've got a very broad range of speakers. We have the CEO of a bank, for example, along with all of our, we have performance poets and singers and choreographers and authors and so on. But for me, if you are living intentionally and you're developing a future intentfully, you're intending the future that emerges, you're living a creative life. And it doesn't really matter what it is. So, there's this movement these days towards mindfulness. And there's a famous book, I think it came out in the 70s, Be Here Now. And as a director, when I'm working with actors, one of the things that I work on really hard with actors is to help them be here now. And that just means be in your skin, be in this moment, and don't be thinking about what might have happened maybe in the past if you partially remember it, or what you imagine might happen in the future if you can estimate it and forecast it. But what is happening now? What are you experiencing in this moment? And what are you doing now? Because as Eckhart Tolle says, the Zen philosopher, this moment is the only moment in which you're actually having experiences rather than half remembering them or imagining them in the future. And it's the only moment in which you are an actor in the original sense, that you make a decision now. So as he puts it, you should focus about 80% of your attention on this moment. And when you live that way, it could be that you walk in a different way down the street, or you greet people in a different way, or you cook different food, or anything. That's creativity.
And I was going to say, jump in when you were talking about, you know, like be here now, or, you know, being present, is that is one of the things I love most about creativity or creating, is when I'm creating, I try to get into the zone for most part. I don't always get there, but a lot of time I can jump right in. And when I do get into that zone, I'm completely in the now. So that's what I love. And, you know, so for me, you know, creativity is a very mysterious process. It's about kind of inviting mystery to kind of dance with me. You know, a lot of times I might have a basic concept of what I want to create. And then as I'm creating, I add an element that completely changes my vision of what I want to create. And I might even like delete various layers in my photo composite and then go into a totally new direction. So yeah, for me, it's about, you know, being open, staying in the moment and being guided by a mysterious, you know, spirit or force or inspiration, whatnot. And being willing to abandon your own kind of concepts of what you think you should be creating or are going to create, I guess. And that's why I think my work also tends to be have a big variety. I don't see my work as like, I am now going to do my geometric series of, you know, it's like I start creating, it's like, hey, go this way. And then I start going this way, and it might be like really colorful. And then the next image I create might be like a sepia tone or duotone, you know? And it's all based on kind of what I feel I'm being pulled to create. So,
but it sounds like you're describing a couple of different ideas there in your approach. One being the idea that there's hello, Andrew.
Yep.
One being that there's
he's in the UK as well, I believe. So.
Oh, awesome. The idea that the creativity doesn't come from you, it comes from your muse. You know, in ancient Greece, they would say you should never take credit for great creative work because it didn't come from you, it came from your muse. But you also, therefore, shouldn't worry too much about criticism for poor quality work because that also came from the muse. And so it's quite stoic, I suppose, this idea that you are you're not responsible for the creation itself, but you're open to the muse as it arrives. And the lady who wrote Eat, Pray, Love said this lovely idea that you can show up, but your muse may not show up. And you can legitimately complain and say, look, I was here, I clocked in, I was ready to create something, where were you? But the other idea I felt you touched on there was this important way that sculptors describe their work sometimes, where they say, you know, the statue is inside the marble or the stone, and my job is to remove the parts that are not the statue. I think it might have been Rodin that described.
Was it Michelangelo or Rodin?
Michelangelo said that, or
no.
I don't know which one it was. And my history is awful. No. My art history is awful. But this idea that you sense the presence of the thing, and you just strip away what is not it. But it is, in both cases, it's discovery, right? You've got the muse, and you've got the, you know, you've got the. It's like it has a life of its own that reveals itself to you.
And that's why I'm willing to abandon like an original idea or concept that I have, you know. So yeah, in fact,
it's challenging. What's that?
What? No, you were
challenging to because I think people who see themselves as creative feel this great burden to somehow live that life and be that thing. You know, there's a sort of public performance. It's that rule of consistency that holds societies together. That if you describe yourself as a creative, whatever we mean by that, you feel a compulsion to live and speak and move and behave like a creative. But then that's a fabricated thing. Some of the most extraordinary creative minds are quite boring when you see them. You know, they're it's like spiritually, you know, if you've met people that have dedicated their lives to spirituality, some of the most profound speakers that I've encountered seem really quite boring and down to earth until they start speaking about that one subject that they're a specialist in. And I think it's kind of like that with creativity, that, you know, there's two problems. One is, if you do identify as a creative, how do you enact that in your life? How do you show people that you're creative beyond your practice? But I think the other challenge is that people who don't identify as a creative person, it's somehow like they feel it's inappropriate for them to even try. They shouldn't doodle, they shouldn't sketch, they shouldn't piece together mosaics because they don't identify as a creative person, so somehow that's not their role. And actually, I think that being creative, I think both are wrong, right? I think that actually being creative is so utterly fundamental to being human that the very experience of being conscious is creative. You're interpreting everything around you. Every experience you have is an interpretation of what's happening. And if you can convey that experience to somebody in a way that changes them, whether it's by telling a good story or singing a powerful song, you are creative. So actually, I'm not sure that anyone could not be creative, I think is what I'm trying to say. I don't think you can not be creative. But if you put a capital C, it becomes a job title.
Right. And I would say that one thing that is so-called bad about the times we're in is the way that these social networks have been formatted, have been big time formatted for, you know, how many likes did you get and comments and, you know, that kind of feedback. And then I'm guilty of that too, to a certain degree. Like if I'm getting some type of activity, then I know that my work is good. It's touched people, right? But yet, if you become dependent on that, I think that will kill your creativity. And another thing is, you know, people talk about imposter syndrome.
Yeah.
That's another comparison, you know, so you're comparing yourself to other people. And that's why I like the idea that when I create, I can go in any direction, and therefore my style does not, it has a similarity, but my style does not repeat itself too often, because I understand that one time when I do something that might be more abstract and a small amount of people might appreciate it, and then something else I might do that has a certain more kind of realistic storytelling to it, a lot more people might like it, comment, whatever. And I just see that as the flow of it. That's the flow. That something I do might be considered esoteric, and not many people might even get it, or even like wondered why I created it. And other people might love it. And then other things, you know, a majority of people might like, you know, because it touches upon something that makes more sense to them, I guess you could say. And so I'm not really scared of having to play one role or have to represent myself in one way. You know, it's kind of, I need to express. That's one thing I do need to do is I feel compelled. And like if days go by, I don't necessarily feel guilty, but I feel like my soul is telling me you need to jump back in.
There's a lack.
Yeah.
So what is that for you because you have particular kinds of creative expression, I suppose, that you tend towards? It's not to say you couldn't do anything else, but you tend towards particular things.
Right.
The way you describe it, it sounds like, you know, experimental dance. You're going to pick a movement and you're going to go with it and see where the music moves your body. And it sounds like for you, your creative process is, in that sense, it's a kind of discovery. You've got the parameters of the medium you're working in, but you're just going to see where it takes you. But within that, how would you quantify the creative act? You know, if you were to say, yeah, you know, this is me sipping my coffee and sitting down at my computer, but this thing that I just did, that thing is creativity. How do you know when you've created something?
Right. I mean, I work primarily in Photoshop doing, you know, photo montage, you know, digital art. And, you know, for me, that's my very continuous, dependable format. You know, I mean, I know Adobe Illustrator to a degree and other kind of computer apps, but I tend to stay in Photoshop. I just feel very kind of connected with it, and I've spent a lot of time with it. So it's almost like, for me, creating is a way of freeing myself. It's sort of like a way of saying, I respect what I've learned and the skills that I have with it, but I want to free myself from a lot of the very serious jobs that I've done with it. So when I look back, and I worked in advertising and did retouching and compositing, when I work on my work, I don't mind if some things are off, or you know, not the most beautiful color, or not perfect. And, you know, I do try to have like clean edges if I'm creating a kind of narrative, but I'm willing to embrace so-called mistakes or irregularities in my work, because I'm not doing it for a client. You know, I don't have that kind of perfectionism state of mind when I create. But yeah, for me, creativity it's, you know, in one way dependable. It's Photoshop and photographs and textures and painting and building it together. But like I said, I can go any which way. But the thing that's interesting, though, is there are times when I have a very abstract concept, and then as I'm executing it, it turns out to be something that's very almost like, seems like a movie poster or something that tells us a tale. And so sometimes something very storytelling or realistic will come out of something that's very abstract, and vice versa can happen with my work. So
it sounds.
I don't know if that answered your question actually at all.
But you touched on something there that I think is really, really crucial for the creative process, because if you are working for clients, let's say you're doing design work and you're producing, absolutely, Pierre, I agree. Yep. You know, let's say that you are working to a deadline and you have deliverables, and those deliverables have criteria and parameters and rules and boundaries which are set by the client. And so in that situation, there's limited scope for creativity, because, for example, your client might say, well, we have our on-brand color palette, and you've got to use just that color palette. And for some creatives, that can be a really interesting challenge. As long as they give you at least 3 colors, you can now build that into something really interesting, and it presents you with a challenge. And in many ways, I think that type of creative work can be easier, because you can always blame somebody else, right, and say, well, you know, I wouldn't normally make this sort of thing, but I could only use 3 colors, and, you know, I couldn't use this. I mean, I know from producing, I've worked a lot for Adobe over the last 20 years, producing educational materials. And Adobe have this big book of what do they call it? It's like a branding guide, right? So there's certain types of images you can't use. There's certain types of images that are encouraged. There's you know, particular ways things are described. It's ever so precise. And I started out by trying to exactly follow the rule book, and then ended up feeling like, you know, I'm just going to do my best, because it's going to go through so many teams reviewing this content that somebody, if I mess up, someone's going to flag it, and it'll be okay. So it's actually a teamwork creative process. But the other work that you're describing sounds much more like a kind of dangerous or inspiring freedom, where you just say, well, I'm going to make something, and I'm going to see what wants to be made. Right. And it's almost as if the future creates itself. You know, this object, this design, demands to be made. There's an American author called Richard Bach, who I've often mentioned. I'm a fan. And he described his second book. The first book he wrote that he was famous for was Jonathan Livingston Seagull, very well known. The second book he wrote was Illusions, and he'd said that he didn't want to write ever again. He found writing Jonathan was so hard that he just didn't want to be an author, and didn't, you know, it sold 60 million copies. It was a really successful book, but he didn't enjoy the process. But he described that with Illusions, the book demanded to be written. It would tear the ceiling off of his house, off his bedroom, and pull the walls down and throw the door aside and shake him out of his bed and command him to write it. And I think that there's something different about that type of experience. You know, we all have these experiences where, you know, I'm a filmmaker, right? So I come up with an idea for a scene. You know, I've got this James Bond affectation, and a few people have said, "Oh, you'd make a good Bond," and I'm getting back into acting. And a friend said, I think I mentioned to you, you know, a friend said, "Hey, you should just shoot a thing and send it in," because they're choosing another Bond. So my friends and I said, "Well, let's just do it." So we shot a bunch of stuff of me holding a gun and looking Bond-like. And we can all do those kinds of projects where we just think, I'm going to play. You know, I'm going to get into the sandpit and I'm going to move things around and make castles and walls and things. But then there's another kind of creative work that we engage with that just demands to be made. And I think in life, there are a couple of different kinds of decisions as a parallel. That we have decisions that we make where we think, well, I need to eat breakfast, so I'm going to eat breakfast. And here am I eating breakfast. You know, I've got to go to work. I've got to do this thing. There's a sort of logical precedent for the choices that we make. You see a poster advertising holidays and you think, yeah, I'm gonna go on holiday, right? There's triggers. But then there are other decisions that we make in our lives that are more like the way the ocean moves when the moon pulls it across the surface of the earth. It's not that one bit of the ocean pushes the next bit and the next bit and it moves across like that. That's not how it works. Every particle of water in the ocean moves together, moved by the moon. The gravitational pull of the moon works on every particle and the whole thing moves. Or in fact, as I heard the other day, you've got these two lumps of water, one pulled by the moon, one pulled by the sun, and the earth rotates inside of it. But it's not that there's this causality to it. It's just all moving together. And I think in our lives, and I think in our creative work, we have projects, we have acts of creation that we don't logically decide to make. We don't think, yeah, it would be a good idea for me to iterate on this idea in Photoshop or whatever. Instead, it just is a thing that we're doing. It's not like you can say, I've decided to do it. It's not like you can say, I approve of doing it. You just are doing it. Like some people feel like, I need to move to another country. And you ask them why. You know, I'm going to move to such and such a place in the world. And you say, well, why? And they can't give you a very satisfactory explanation. There is no explanation. It is simply something that I'm doing. And I am doing it. A decision may have been made at some point of in my unconscious, or I don't know, some divine influence or whatever it is, but I am moving to another country. It is a thing that is happening. And I think that happens in our creative work as well. You find yourself thinking, I can't tell you why, but I am going to create a series of images to do with butterflies. Or I'm going to express the liminal in the sky. I simply am going to do this. And if you question it too much, it's like rejecting your muse. If you say, well, you know, let me convince myself to do this work and produce this thing, it's like sometimes these ideas creatively, they're like trying to catch hold of perfume in the air, and you can't see it or feel it, but you can smell it, you can sense that it's there. And the best thing you can do is try to follow it with your nose in this example. But I think sometimes creative work, the essence, the core of a creative project is so subtle, it's so ephemeral, that if you try to break it down too much and think about it, the deconstruction becomes destructive. You've got to let go. To your point, you've got to just let go and be part of the thing that's being created. You know, you work, you grow together.
And can I add an element to that as well?
Yeah, go for it.
So one thing that kind of came to me, and I've thought about this before, but it kind of came to me in a fresh way with what you're saying. It's very well said. Thank you. Is I think creativity is also the expression of who you are. It's your individuality. So yeah. When I express, and the things that draw me to express, it's an affirmation of me. It's an affirmation of my individuality, of my, I guess, essence, you could say. And that's why there's, you know, That's why there's rock and roll and classical music and jazz. And those are I would say those are the expressions of, like Miles Davis. That's his expression. He is jazz. His jazz is him. It's his expression of his personality, his individuality, his essence. And that's why, so I try to have a very open-minded view of creativity. But yet I'm very aware, for most part, there are certain things I'll probably never do. So I can look at the spectrum of creativity, especially visual arts, and I'll look at, say, 3D work, and I'll be like, wow, that's amazing. I have no interest in doing that. And then, I'll see something that's overly pretty or something. And I like pretty elements or beautiful elements in my work at times, of course, but I might say that's not my style,
Yeah.
And that's the beauty of the spectrum of creativity, is that people are, I think for the most part, expressing their essence. So, if someone tried to do, even studying art history, I was a fine art major, and I studied a lot of art history. And even when you look at the different ways that different artists express the same type of movement, it's very different. So, like with Cubism, Picasso has his look and style, and I can't think of other people because he was kind of like the king of it. But other people who were Cubist artists at the time had a completely different look, even though it was similar principles. And same with Impressionism. Like Van Gogh's work is very different from Seurat or Cézanne. And like Matisse had his own kind of language, I guess you could say, that was his essence. And that's what's very intriguing to me. So if I look at a spectrum of creativity, I could say, if someone does something very imaginative, is that more creative than someone who does, say, portrait photography? And then I'll look at some work of portrait photographers and the way that they deal with lighting and the way that they bring out the essence of the person they're capturing. That is absolutely creative. So,
yes.
And then we have someone. I was just going to say, we have someone also saying, and beauty is a slippery word. Do you mean it as understood in the 18th, 19th century sense of aesthetic? I guess for me, it's just my own concept of beauty, though. I'm not,
There's kind of two takes on beauty, isn't there? Because there's a scientific measure of beauty. We tend to perceive eyes that are wider apart, that sort of thing. Almost perfectly symmetrical faces, clear skin. There's specific identifiable characteristics that we as a species are, let's say, we have a genetic predisposition towards finding attractive and finding beautiful. It's the golden mean, of course, and that sort of thing. But then there are cultural changes over time, different body shapes, facial shapes, and hairstyles that we identify culturally as beautiful and desirable. But you touched on, but I love what you highlighted there. There are forms of creative expression that are, let's say, more dramatically different. Maybe some, surrealism, for example, a surrealist image, fantastic. My mother lives near Malaga in Spain, and there's a fantastic Picasso museum there. It's just mind-blowing. And it's just so very different. And then you've got portraiture. Now, a friend of mine is a fine artist, Gordon Scott, and he produces these incredibly detailed, incredibly nuanced portraits. And I think when you encounter a piece of creative work that makes you do a double take, there's something going on there, And yes, it's a portrait, but there's so much nuance, there's so much emotion, there's so much going on that the portrait has somehow attempted to capture the spirit of the subject. iPhones do this, I forget what they call it now, these live photos, right? So you take a photo, but it actually captures about half a second either side or a second either side of movement as a video. It's a kind of a Harry Potter style thing. And it's quite powerful. It's very different to seeing a regular photo. You press and hold on the thing, And you get, so you say, hey, turn and look at the camera, and you look at the camera and you get the picture. But with this technology, you get them looking the wrong way, and you hear, and they turn back and go, huh? And that's the image. And you're somehow to capture that in a painting or a drawing or a charcoal drawing is something, for me, it's magic. It's alchemy. I don't know how that happens. So I think whether it's really experimental and different and shocking, or it's a classic form like a landscape or a portrait, within those realms, there are good and bad examples. And I'm reminded of that thing, when I'm old enough to remember when word processors became a thing. And there was a lot of talk of it being the end of the publishing industry because everybody could now publish a book. But it turns out that beautifully typeset, beautifully laid out, beautifully spell-checked bad writing is still bad writing. And in fact, it led to a blossoming of the publishing industries, because now people that previously could have been an amazing author but never bothered typing it, they now were producing books and sharing them with the world. You touched on another thing there that I think is really, really interesting, though. Talking about cubism and who's connected to it. We use this word know, K-N-O-W, to know something. In modern English, we mean, do you know what time it is, right? You've gathered a piece of factual information, or what knowledge do you have? But originally, the word meant something different. It meant to be one with. And when you're one with something or someone, you and they are both changed by the knowing. And there's this beautiful phrase. I spent a few months in Tokyo before the lockdown kicked in, and they have this thing that they say in Japan, that you can never truly know Tokyo unless you are of Tokyo. Unless you were born and raised in Tokyo, you will never truly know it. Because it's only if you're born there that you are it. And so I think it is with creative work, to your point, that if you create something truly original, there's part of your essence in that work that is uniquely you and cannot be separated. And you are changed by the creative practice. And the thing is what it is uniquely because it was you that made it. And the two are inseparable. But I think that there's work that's not quite like that. There's work that feels generic. There's work that is just, like sanding a table. Lots of people can sand a table. But when you create work that's identifiably you, your essence is somehow captured in it.
Yeah, and like I said, I'm just very intrigued by, like I said, what I perceive as the essence of the person in their work. So, there's such a big spectrum that it's intriguing to me to see, work that I find, like some work that'll have such a very sensitive or beautiful innocence. And then I might find work that's either violent or sexual. And just to see that spectrum, I find very intriguing. Now there's a couple questions I want to touch upon in the comments, but so I'm not sure if this person is referring to you or me, but they were saying, but is attraction the primary structure you want to evoke? I'm not sure what that relates to, because we've been talking for a bit.
Well, I think you were talking earlier about beauty, perceptions of beauty, and
right,
that being your work.
But my work is not always about beauty. So
right,
it can be about darkness and strange dreams, or the meditative state, or So I never want my work to be about one theme, one concept.
Yeah, I think the short answer to that question is no.
Right.
So not always, but I think that to my mind, one of the key goals when developing a creative work is that you want to trigger change in the individual who experiences your work. Now, it could be that you're using poetry to get this clash of ideas from language that produce, like a haiku, produces a sense of a feeling that cannot be expressed with words. All you can do is bang the words together in a way that produces a new meaning that isn't real, that we don't have a word for, but we're constructing it. Or it could be a painting. My mother's partner my mother's an abstract figurative artist. She does this combination of figurative and abstract. She's great ink works as well. Ellen Zaks, check out Ellen Zaks. She's amazing. And her partner, Stefan Dowsing, he's a pure abstract artist. And before I encountered his work, to be honest, I just thought abstract art was a bit silly. I just couldn't see the point in it. You know, it's just shapes. What's it for? And I know, but I was naive. But I encountered shame on you. But I didn't know, right? It was ignorance. I wasn't attacking anybody. It was just ignorance. And I encountered a piece of Stefan's work, again, Stefan Dowsing, and I was looking, and it's just shapes, right? It was just shapes and color. And as I stood with the painting and had time with it, I felt myself change. Something happened to me, and I knew that this feeling was because I was witnessing this painting, and it was like, oh, I get it. Right. Abstract art is a thing. And I spoke to Stefan about this, and I've quoted him before, and he said the thing that's important about his work is that he's not trying to be clever. He's not trying to make an intellectual point or outsmart anybody. He means for you to feel the thing that you're feeling. His work is meant. It's not postmodern. I'm not a fan of postmodernism. He's not postmodern. He's not trying to be anything. He's just meaning for you to have an experience. It's very powerful.
That reminds me of I think I was in Cambridge or Harvard area, and I went to one of the museums in that area. Mm. And you walk into a room, and there was a big Mark Rothko on the wall.
Oh yeah, Rothko.
And Rothko, as you know, is minimal expression of one, two, or at the most 3 different colors, kind of abstract. And so as I went in, and I'd seen his, I think, work before, but maybe more so in books than in a real museum. Mm-hmm. And as I walked in, the first reaction was there was like a voice that said, I can see how some people would see this as too simplistic or could write this off. And then I walked up to it and I kind of meditated on it. And then, like you said, I got embraced by a feeling of it. And I could see that his paintings were a meditation of some sort, a meditation on feeling, on abstract feeling or expression. And I thought it was very sincere, So, it's sincere, even though it's beyond a lot of the accepted ways of doing things. You know what I mean? Like whenever a artistic movement has happened, it's testing people's, thoughts and boundaries of what should and shouldn't be, I guess you could say. But I think that what they're doing is they're helping you transcend. They're helping you transcend and go deeper into another realm of experiencing life or feeling. So that's why I love like the surrealists and I love the German expressionists, and I was a printmaking major and I used to study a lot of that. And that David says, painting doesn't require an audience like other arts. That's an interesting point. Yeah,
I'm not sure I agree with that.
Yeah,
I'm going to be pedantic,
I'm not sure David. What he means by it.
Well, I very much appreciate sharing the sentiment, but I think there's a reason why we describe it as a medium. And, you have a medium to convey, through the medium, you convey insight, experience, understanding. Wisdom is unfortunately, I suppose, wisdom is the product of experience, not the product of age. And so as an artist, I think what you convey via your medium is wisdom. You convey an understanding about some aspect of the human condition or your own experience of being human. And in doing so, you expand the understanding of somebody else. But unless you have an audience for it, and maybe I'm being pedantic about the word, but unless someone receives that message, they receive what it is that you've communicated via the medium, then what's it for? And I suppose you could say, well, I just create work for myself. So I'm just going to paint or I'm going to write, and I'm never going to show anything that I create to anybody else. It's just for me. Well, in that case, your audience is your future self. You're sending yourself messages, but you still have an audience. It's just that that audience is a future version of you,
or limited in some way.
And I'm sure, you know, we'd all love to have a time telephone. You know, I'd be telling myself to buy Bitcoin, but we'd all like to have a time telephone to say, you know, kiss the girl, or, you know, whatever the thing is that we didn't know when we were younger. But the flip side of that is that we can convey messages to ourselves in the future, and we can do that in all sorts of artistic ways, and share with our future selves how we're feeling today and what we're dealing with today. I read a lovely article by some game developers who were just they were just developing games and, you know, working on them and selling them, and they look back on their experience of creating these games, and they realized that unconsciously the narratives in the games that they developed were expressing what was happening for them in their lives at the time. Yeah, I'll take two as well. And this, you know, they were developing game concepts that via which they were working through. Like one of the developers, his father had died while they were working on the game, and I forget what the game was, but there was a clear aspect of the narrative of the game that was to do with the loss of a patriarchal figure in your life and how that changes your perception of yourself and your world. And he hadn't even realized that the parallel existed in the game, that it was happening. So when you look back at your body of work as an artist, it's like an archaeological dig for your emotional journey, your path up the mountain, the journey that you've taken. All right, now somebody says what an audience receives is always filtered through. Right. Absolutely. Yeah.
And I wanted to make a point on that too, because it brought up something that I've experienced kind of thoroughly with the groups. So what an audience receives is always filtered through their own experiences. So one thing I've seen play out a lot in my groups that I've been kind of amused by, it's a good word, healthy word. At the same time, it gets a little bit, you know, there's some babysitting that goes on being a moderator in the groups. But, you know, when someone posts in my, you know, Photoshop and Lightroom group or the Photoshop and photography group, part of the group rules states, and I created this many years ago too, is it's a given that people will give constructive criticism unless you state no CC. You don't want to be, you know, constructive criticism.
That's nice. Yeah.
And the thing that I've always found intriguing, and that's one of the biggest things I enjoy about the groups, is once again the spectrum of perception of what someone sees when someone posts something. So if someone posts something that's, you know, an image about depression, some people will say, "Wow, that is so powerful," and some people might just say that's downright ugly. Okay. And that kind of spectrum is intriguing to me, that people come from, I think they come from like their world of experiences. Yeah. So that's why I like this comment, is I think they see things through their world of experiences. So I think that if someone has had the, how do I say this? If someone has had the privilege of having an easier life than other people, then they might not enjoy dark imagery or something. You know what I mean? They might see that as like a negativity, where if someone has struggled and suffered with depression through their life, or poverty, or death, you know, death in a family or from a friend or something, then that might be something they want to express. And for them, it's part of the journey of life, and it's not a negative thing at all, or a chosen negativity. It's an expression. So I've just found it very intriguing that this is a great statement for me. I believe that what people receives, or I would say perceives, what an audience perceives is filtered through their own experiences. And so, you know, something that, you know, like a good example is when I post my work itself, what happens is, if it's very abstract, some people will really love it and they connect with it. And then other people will say those type of comments like, "This is absolute rubbish." And I'm like, why do you need to say that? If it's not your thing, then move on. You know,
I have some advice about that, actually.
Yeah.
I came up with this phrase that I have found to be so valuable when it comes to receiving feedback, criticism, mentorship, you name it. And the phrase is this: why would this person say this to me now? Why would this person say this to me now? And there's a lot of blanks to fill in that question. So why would this person, who really are they, say this? What exactly did they say? To me, who do they think I am? What's their perception of me? And now, why this moment? Why not some other time? And so when you fill in the blanks in that question, you discover more often than not that you don't particularly value their feedback and you don't think it's particularly relevant. But occasionally, you know, as my brother said to me recently, one of the great things about having brothers and sisters is that they're one of the few people in the world that want nothing at all from you. They just are on your side. They're in your team. They don't want anything. They don't want you to do anything. They don't want you to change anything. They don't want to give you anything. They just want you to be happy, and they're on your side. And there are very few people in the world like that. And if you study,
that's not too common, right?
Very rare. If you've ever studied, and I highly recommend it, the Nonviolent Communication, the System of Nonviolent Communication, which is absolutely life-changing book. It's a phenomenal book. And I'm trying to remember the author's name. I almost had it. Maybe it'll come to me. But it's the gist of it is that anytime you define another person, you will upset them. And it doesn't matter whether you're defining them in a complimentary way. So I come over to your place, you make me dinner, and I say, you're a good chef. It's kind of annoying, right? Or if I don't like the food and I say you're a bad chef, obviously it's annoying. But actually,
why is it annoying if you give a compliment, though?
Because I'm defining you. I'm telling you what you are. And what works, and in order for me to do that, I have to place myself in a superior position to you socially.
Right, you're
I have
judging
to be dominant to tell you what you are. And the right way to approach it is to say, thank you, I really enjoyed that food. Or thank you, that food was not to my taste. Whether you're a good or bad chef is none of my business. But this is why, you know, you can never be friends with someone that you're impressed by. You can only be friends with someone that you respect. 90% of the time, feedback is useless. Yeah, but again, if you answer that question, why would this person say this to me now? You can tell whether it's, you know, if a person is in a mentorship role. This is what the author says of the Nonviolent Communication book. He says, if you're with someone whose role is to be your mentor, great. You know, they're there to tell you about the quality of your work or whether you can improve in your skills and so on. But otherwise, it just doesn't help. I wanted to mention as well about the audience receives or perceives what's filtered through their experience. That's true of our entire reality. If I say to you, think of an apple, in order to understand the words I'm speaking, your brain has to come up with correspondences and associations, and it works out, oh, apple. And what you get is a particular image, particular flavor, even a particular memory that's completely unique to you that I can never know.
Yeah, that's excellent, because so here's a good example of that, and I totally agree, which is it's kind of discouraging in ways too for me, because I know that given other circumstances, I could have had a much better relationship to the apple. But what it is growing up, I don't know why, but I think my family always would buy I call it the so-called Red Delicious, because it's a horrible apple. It tastes really terrible.
Gold Delicious.
For years, my family would buy bags of that or something. Maybe it was most accessible or something.
I'm all about the Brayburns.
Yeah, and so when I think of an apple, almost my first reaction is always horrible. Negative. Red Delicious. And at the same time, I do enjoy like a sweeter, like Macintosh type of
So we're actually all of the time experiencing a dramatically filtered version of reality in the context of our unique personal history, and somehow language is universal enough for us to be modestly confident that we're really dealing in categories, aren't we?
Right.
So if I say, let's have a coffee, let's is a sort of logical proposition. Have is to, right? It's a logical proposition. But coffee is a category of thing. Let's have this category of thing. And hopefully the instances that we have within our categories are similar enough that you understand what I mean. This is great. Rubbish is the same as it.
I like the Green Granny Smith comment.
Yeah, I feel like we're running out of time. This has gone really, really fast. Yeah. We only have a few minutes left.
I know, it's amazing, right? Time is elusive that way, right? It's like you get into it. And,
as soon as you're enjoying it.
Someone says, rubbish is the same as saying, I like it. It is an unsophisticated statement that does not engage any critical understanding of the work presented and leads to an expanded comprehension of what is being visually considered.
But I actually think that there is a difference, though, obviously, right? So if you say something's rubbish, you're defining its value. You're saying it has no value. But if you say I like it, you're saying I find it appeals to my sensibilities. So you're not actually saying whether it has value or not, except that in our culture, we tend to say that if I like something or dislike it, automatically I'm saying it has value or not. That's not realistic, but it's what people often mean. That's why so many people, they struggle to both love somebody and disagree with them. It's I think one of the great failings of modern civilization, that we've forgotten how to love someone while also disagreeing with them. That we have to demonize them and hate them. So
I love these type of discussions because it brings up, other things that I've thought about before, and then I can bring them out to other people. So one thing that has haunted me in life is the fact that, with this type of discussion, you realize that everyone is walking around with their perceptions and their memories of different things. So whenever they come across something, there's this whole bank of memories that kind of show up and then register what that reality is for them. So as an example, an apple. So for me, my first reaction might be like it repulsed because of, the so-called red delicious, which is not delicious at all. And so one thing that has haunted me, though, in the past, and sometimes even now, and I've been married for a while, but in relationships in the past and also being married, sometimes there are moments where no matter how well you connect, no matter how much you are enjoying a moment together, I'm very aware that I really don't know what my wife is thinking or the person that I was dating in the past is thinking. And sometimes I found that to be very haunting. Like you're in a very intimate relationship and you're sharing your life together and so much time, so much energy together. And yet, if you really are realistic about it, there are times when you can just look at that person and say, do I really know this person? Like the way that they express themselves, they might not be expressing all of how they really feel, or, but, there could be times when they're basically lying to, like they say they like something they don't. And so I just, to be honest, I just find that a little haunting sometimes. Like we share this space with others on this planet, and yet we're all completely mysterious in ways,
Yes, I agree. I find that it's fascinating. I mean, it's the great fear that we have as a species, is that we might be truly alone. And I suspect that it's impossible for us to be alone. But there are somehow, there's something that is identifiably you and something that's identifiably another person. And there's a limit to how much you know about each other. And if you're an untrusting person, that can be quite frightening. But I like it kind of relates to I see I'm not sure who the person is because it's just coming up saying Facebook user, but the importance of explaining why you like something. Absolutely. Yeah, I take your point. If you, and this is the same in any kind of human relations, if people don't give you the why, then it is kind of meaningless, isn't it? But you need to know, if you're sharing your life with a partner and you get to know them through the ways in which they demonstrate their priorities, is it, you get to learn about who you are actually. You learn to know yourself by observing the priorities, the things that matter to you. So someone I know is 16 and he's just left school and he's not sure what to do next, and was concerned that he doesn't have a life plan. And I was saying, you've got to be kidding me. You're not supposed to have a life plan at 16. Don't be ridiculous. All you should be doing is having as many experiences as you can so that you can discover what you enjoy and what you don't enjoy, and what seems important to you and what doesn't, so that you can learn who you are. You know, as they said over the Gnostic temple, know thyself. You know, and in fact, to the point that we've been discussing about perception, you know, they had this idea the macrocosm is inside the microcosm. They said, as above, so below, that the universe you inhabit is inside of you. It's just you're experiencing the inside of yourself. And so if you don't know who you are, how can you know your world? And yeah, that's the classic question, isn't it? Do I see the same blue that you see? And we've actually done some research into this as a species now. And the conclusion that I read most recently, some time ago now, is that broadly speaking, roughly, yes, we do experience approximately the same blue as each other. And the reason we know that is that broadly speaking, color perception, there's a sort of range. And some people have an extra chromosome thing that means they're super sensitive to varying shades of a particular color. Sometimes it's beige, sadly. Well, maybe not sadly, but people have this incredibly sensitive awareness to different gradations of the color beige. But broadly speaking, we know from however we've tested that with neurons and with the wavelengths of specific, you know, light of a particular color is actually light of a particular frequency. We know that it produces a specific type of response, and that we will apprehend roughly the same shades. It's not exact, but roughly the same, unless you're colorblind, you know, it's a dramatic difference. But how we feel about that color and how we interpret that color, how we respond to the color, it's entirely in you and as a product of experience. Yeah, and you might have synesthesia, right? You might have senses that are misassociated, so you see things as particular shades. I met someone years ago who saw numbers as colors as well. Thank you, Lucas. Thank you. I feel like I ought to share a bit about the. Can I mention a little bit about the conference before we? Do we have a cutoff time for this, or are we?
Nope. Keep on going.
Great.
Yeah, I do want to say this is always a pleasure speaking with you, because you always, you know, springboard, you know, some other great thoughts that I've had.
Some crazy ideas. Yeah. Well, this is well. Thank you for bringing this up on screen. This is the Creativity Conference.
Should I make it full screen?
Sure. Yeah. Go for it.
Sure.
No one needs to see my face. The so the Creativity Conference is a 3-day completely free event taking place from the 4th to the 6th of August. Coming up, it's a few weeks away. We have over 50 amazing world-class speakers who are going to be sharing their insights, their inspiration, how they've explored their creative process, and hopefully re-energizing you as an attendee, and you'll be able to learn about different creative approaches. So totally free, all online. We're running it as Zoom meetings rather than webinars, so you can interact with the speakers more easily. And we're planning raffles, and it's just going to be phenomenal. Please sign up, join us, and we'll be able to tell you about it. It's coming up, but set those dates aside. Anybody who registers gets access to the replays for free for a considerable time afterwards. We haven't decided on a cutoff point yet, but it'll be a considerable time afterwards. And so otherwise you'll have to pay to access the recordings later. But that's it's a strange domain extension. So it's www, not that you need that, .creativityconference.is, which is the Icelandic domain extension. And on that note, the original concept for the conference was that it would be held in person in Reykjavik in Iceland. And we are booked in to Reykjavik University for next August in person. We'll be running, I think the plan is 7 concurrent rooms, 105 sessions over 3 days, a music night, a movie night at the Best Dome Cinema in Europe, at the Ice Museum. We'll be live streaming all of the sessions. So if you can't fly yourself to Iceland, you can dial in for free and remotely access the talks. So we're trying to make it as free as possible, you know, but but if you fly in, you have to pay for a ticket because we've got a whole bunch of costs having people there. But we'll be selling tickets for next year's conference with a huge discount during this year's conference. But the key dates to look out for are the 4th to the 6th. And check out the website. Take a look at what we're presenting. It's we ran this conference in January, and the feedback was just phenomenal, because we're not talking about workflows or techniques or technology or branding or business skills or anything like that at all. We're just talking about inspiration and manifesting that inspiration. And thanks for asking. Next year is August. So it's August every year. So it's August the 4th to the 6th this year. Next year it's the 1st to the 3rd. It's the same week, first week of August. And we'll just keep doing it that way. Our long-term plan actually is to also present a creativity conference in Tokyo and another one in Dubai. But for now, we're getting started with Iceland, which is just gorgeous.
And,
really safe.
And did you want to talk about the creative community as well?
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for mentioning that. So after the conference that we had in January, we had lots of people saying that they wanted a way to stay in touch. They really felt that they'd found their family, their tribe, as a creative within the world. So we established the creative community, which again is completely free. It's off Facebook. There's no tracking, no ads, no claiming intellectual property, but it works a bit like a Facebook group. So
did you want to open another tab to just show?
Yeah, let me see if I can. Let me see if I can do that, and bring it up so people can. Can you see that? Is that?
Yep, the feed.
Now?
Yep.
There it is. This is the
welcome home
feed.
for all creatives. Yep.
Right. So it's just a place where people are posting their projects. They're talking about the work that they're producing. And, you know, I wrote an article for the Awareness Ties magazine, which went out recently. So the creative
actor that was in Breaking Bad?
What's that?
As you go down, is that the actor that was in Breaking Bad?
Let's have a look.
Right,
I think that's the guy on the cover.
Yeah, is that the guy that was in Breaking Bad?
I don't know.
Looks like the actor.
Let's see. RJ Might. RJ Might.
I'm not sure. Yeah.
Yeah. Anyway, it's absolutely, you know, the creative community is just a free place for people to share and connect and engage. And there's a bit of the community just for the creativity conference. Thomas Benner said, I'm in Texas.
That is.
Oh yeah, thank you, Thomas. Yeah.
Yeah.
I write the official book on Premiere Pro, so I'm kind of known for that. Post-production training, that sort of stuff. Language and culture. Yeah. Oh, that's fascinating, Thomas. Yeah. Words. So in South American languages, there are words distinguishing colors that do not exist, and they're not recognized in America. Wow. Isn't that fantastic? I was speaking to somebody today, you know, who was saying it's a shame. It's a shame that we, you know, there's this classic story that the Eskimos have lots and lots of different words for snow, and it's a shame we don't have lots and lots of different words for love. You know, that our focus tends to be on destructive stuff. But anyway, so yeah. I'd encourage anybody to check out the conference and the community, and just sign up. It takes about, I reckon it takes about 8 seconds to sign up for the conference, because it's just your name and your email address, and maybe 15 seconds to sign up for the community, because we ask you important questions like, if you had a superpower, if you could have any superpower, what would it be? That's one of the most important questions to answer.
Great. Great. And I also want to remind everyone that you can follow Maxim at maximjago.com. Yes,
indeed, which I desperately need to update, but I'm easy to find there. So.
I need to update my Behance. I've updated my blog, my website, but I've let my Behance kind of fall behind a couple years. You know,
there's so many platforms now, and I feel like we're moving towards a time where there's a kind of consolidation. There's a couple of platforms that you can use. I haven't looked at it in ages, but there's Hootsuite and a few other things where you can log into the platforms via that and share. But and Zapier and If This Then That will help a little bit by connecting social media accounts.
Well, there's about to be an overlap.
Thank you, David.
Yeah.
An overlap?
Yeah, there's about to be an overlap of similar realities, where during the pandemic it was like perfectly timed for Clubhouse to come out. And so Clubhouse, if you don't know, is the audio app where groupings of people can come into a room, and then you can raise your hand, come up to the stage, and where the main host and moderators or co-hosts are speaking. And then you can take turns talking, asking questions and all that. And then what happened is, Zuckerberg doesn't want to miss a beat. He was talking about creating an audio app. And then I've seen news lately that they're closer to releasing the audio app. So there's going to be a Facebook version of, say, Clubhouse coming out probably even this summer. And I myself welcome it, though, especially if it can work in groups, because we could do exactly something like this as an audio meeting in the group itself. And then people could jump in and also, ask questions or speak and take turns. And I think that would be a new kind of creative outlet for groups, especially in my group where it's people share their work and get feedback, et cetera, and make comments. It'd be nice to kind of hear people's voices of people that I've followed or have been friends with on Facebook for years. So I'm all for it.
We'd like that feature we're using Mighty Networks for the creative community. And I would just love for there to be a button you could click to join. We've got groups within the community, and it'd be great to be able to just say, right, I'm in the film, TV, and games group. I'll just join the audio room and chat with whoever's here.
Yeah, I love that.
And I think that would just be fantastic. I would guess that Facebook's going to get there first out there.
Yeah, someone told me about Mighty Networks. Would you say that's a good one to join? And
well, that's what I chose for the creative community, and ultimately I looked at so many.
But you don't go to Mighty Networks itself just to kind of socialize. You use it as a platform to run creative.
Yeah. So I mean, the just their model is that you join Mighty Networks and then you establish a community, and you have to pay. So right now I'm paying the fees myself for that. But I'd like to find a sponsor, but I want it to be, a low-key sponsor, one that's happy to just be there, lurking supportively, and without it being, buy our amazing thing today, but just we can put their logo there and say supported by, and I think that would work very nicely for everybody.
But at the same time, with a name like creativity, so creativity conference, creativity community. You got to get Adobe on board with that one in the future.
Yeah, it's funny. We had a tough call with Adobe because they call Max, which I've spoken at many times. They call Max the creativity conference, and so we had a little bit of a snafu with them where they were saying, "Hang on a minute, they partnered with us on the January conference. They're talking about partnering with us in the conference coming up in August. I'm waiting to hear back from them, but they own that phrase apparently in America, the creativity conference." And it's associated with Max, but we're not an American company. We're a UK company holding an event online and in Iceland.
Thankfully, that's the truth, right? If you were
right, so they just said, "Oh well, in that case, yeah, right." But they said, "Well, in that case, it's totally fine." But I said to them, I think that it's such a perfect fit, and we're not showing any technology at all. We had a similar conversation with FMC, who run fantastic conferences on post-production and all sorts of creative design applications, but they're teaching you skills predominantly. They do creative stuff as well, but it's predominantly a usable, practical skill that you can take into your work, and they do it amazingly well. There's just no point competing with them. They're brilliant and deserve their success. But we had a lovely chat and ended up agreeing that there was great synergy. And so we've been co-marketing and announcing each other's events, and I don't see we don't see each other as competition. It's mutually supportive.
Sure.
And that's what I want to do more and more. I want the giving economy. I want to live in a world which has a giving economy, where people are just seeing opportunities to give and not to transact. And I think we're moving in that way, and it's very satisfying.
That makes me want to put up my buy me a coffee link. If you want to buy me a coffee.
Well, that's the thing, there you go. Consider paying me. That's great. I love it, but that's that kind of thing where you can just, Patreon are doing this, where you just keep giving what you're giving, and hopefully people will feel like supporting you because they love what you're doing. And I think that, you know, more and more, I mean, we're really grateful to Dell, NVIDIA, and Intel for supporting the Creativity Conference, because they've been so cool about it. First of all, obviously, all three companies.
Can you win like a Dell computer?
Well, so they for the January conference, they gave a prize of a fantastic top-end Dell laptop, but they also, you know, financially they've supported the conference, and they came in early, and they said, you know, we believe in you and we believe in what you're doing, and they were happy to just have their logo there and support what we're doing and not have a big in-your-face marketing message. Nice. And I really respect them for that. You know, it's really shows that they're supportive of the arts, and they've supported us again for this coming conference.
It's refreshing too, right?
So positive.
Yeah, someone says the days of the barter system horse trading are coming back. Thank God.
Yeah, and I think, you know, cryptocurrencies will help a bit with that, tokenized payments, that sort of thing. But anyway, it's good days.
Well, yeah, this has been really great, and I wanted to just once again remind everyone to make sure to check out the Creativity Conference, and that is August 4th. Is that when it begins?
4th to the 6th. Yep.
4th. Yep. Great. Check out the creativecommunity.is and check out Maxim's site, maximjago.com. So.
Well, thank you so much for having me. It's always an absolute pleasure, and it's really now I want to see some of your work, so I'll have to.
I'll send you a link. You know.
Oh,
I'm surprised you haven't checked it out already, but
send it over. Send it over.
Yeah, and I'm hoping to be part of the Creativity Conference on a panel, so maybe talking about digital art or something like that. Yeah.
Yes, indeed. So, yeah.
Great. Yeah, this has been really great. Thank you so much. It's always a great conversation with you, Maxim. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone, for watching. And as usual, I will be placing the link to the recordings in the various groups. I'll let Maxim share it to his followers. And thanks, everyone, for attending. And thanks so much for being part of the groups as well. And
take care, everybody. Have a great weekend.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Have a great weekend, everybody. Thanks so much.